welcome to the Prince Magnum channel, where hot rodding and romance do coexist. I'm your host, Prince Magnum. Welcome back to the series here on this channel called In Your Face, and this is the mini-series called Men of Action. In this series, I've constantly talked about the importance of taking action, to help someone who's in need, help law enforcement, basically being a, that person in the community that won't turn a blind eye and doesn't grab their cell phone like such and just do this. Okay? That is not taking action unless you offer that video footage to the police department. But even then, is there something more you can do? Okay? So in the previous video, we talked about my first time, getting involved in an investigation. It was a criminal investigation, dealt with arson. And learned a great deal from those fire marshals. Again, big special shout out to Metro West Fire District. I learned so much from you guys, and of course my dad being retired from there, I mean, wow, can't say enough good, Well, let's fast forward. Almost 22 years old. My oldest daughter is, at this time, due actually not too terribly long after this. And at this time, I'm getting, I was for a long time, I had a foot, on the right side of the law, and I had a foot in the wrong side of the law. And by this point in time in my life, I'm starting to take that foot out of the wrong side of the law, okay? And I want to be on the right side of the law, I guess you could say. So, now that we got that kind of established, again, this experience on the wrong side of the law has given me an advantage that some investigators don't have, real world experience. So you kind of understand that at that point, that real world experience sometimes is more valuable than a degree. So now, the time comes, I'm still in the medical field, and my then fiance, mother of my first two children, she has a cousin who is murdered, okay? He's red-rummed out of the picture. Now, from the opening, I guess you could say, from the opening of this case, everything didn't sound right, okay? Here's a guy who was getting things right in his life. Now, he'd been involved in drugs for a long time, and he decided that enough's enough. He actually himself was expecting a child, all right? And here he is, he's expecting a child. He's like, I can't live like this. It's time to do the right thing. So, he's all excited about the birth of a new child, and he's taken out of the picture, okay? And the police immediately tried to rule it as him taking himself out of the picture. YouTube doesn't like us content creators using that nasty word, the S word in this case. Well, here's the thing. Something didn't stir the Kool-Aid. The family knew right away. And because of my medical background and the fact that they also knew at one point, by this time I'm getting that foot out of the wrong side of the law, they wanted what I thought. And because I've already had experience with, with criminal investigation and that sort of thing, and again, real world experience, let's take a look at the scene. So I had them lay out the scene for me, how the body was found, Was there, there was a firearm involved. What firearm was in his hand, and everything. Okay, everything that they knew from autopsy reports, the whole 9 yards. And I sat down with this information, and what we discovered through, basically, knowing ballistics like I do. That should not surprise any of you, because Prince Magnum, what happens is they found a .22 revolver in his right hand. The entry wound was about the size of the end of my pinky. Okay? There was an exit wound. Now, there are plenty of videos right here on YouTube that kind of go into the ballistic coefficient of 22. It's not going to go in the size of the end of my pinky. It's going to go in a lot smaller than that. So the hole in the side of his head, right by the temple, would have went in a lot smaller than the end of my pinky, which I need to trim my nails. There wouldn't have really been much in the way of an exit wound, and if there was, it sure as heck would not be the like that, if you will, a much bigger hole in the side of the head. So, what caliber would be about the size of the end of my pinky? Well, that'd be about the size of a 38, a 38 Special, or a 357 Magnum. Now, judging by the proximity, the type of ammunition, I'm going to lean towards more a 38 Special, okay? That's just, is that my expert opinion? Not really, but I know it wasn't no dang 22, okay? Here's the funny thing. They found powder burns, yes, on his hands, okay? Which would be a clear sign of using a revolver. For those that do not know, there's a small gap between the cylinder and the barrel. So when you fire it, you get a little bit of powder burn that comes out the side. That's why they tell you not to place, to try to use that, that tactical grip on using a revolver, because you'll burn your hand. Okay, and if the caliber's large enough, you're going to remove flesh. Okay, so they did find that. Well, earlier that day, he'd been out shooting. And there was also another problem. They found the revolver in his right hand. The guy was left-handed. So this was clearly not thought through. Who was the person he was out shooting with earlier? Well, his fiance's dad, who, by the way, was a former police officer. You can guys see where this is going. So after laying this all out, how they found the body, I knew that by the time the responders had gotten to the scene, that the scene had been tampered with. Okay? Scene had been tampered with. As a matter of fact, one of the first people that was found on the scene was this former police officer. Okay? Now, could be coincidence, but I highly doubt it. And what in the world was a former police officer doing in the middle of a criminal investigation? He's not a police officer anymore. He is, without question, a regular civilian. So he should not have been allowed behind the tape, if you will. The only people civilian-wise, should have been behind the tape would have been, you guessed it, witnesses. Okay? Which the girlfriend was a witness. All right? But even her story didn't quite add up. So everything said that this was a setup. From looking at, all the information that I had available to me, I was then able to surmise that the dad was the one that did it. He's the one that did it. He didn't want his daughter, with this guy, would have been the initial thought. I say the reason why he was a former police officer is because he was a dirty cop, okay? And he wanted my then fiance's cousin to get back into the drug game And when he said no, they took him out. Okay? Again, laying all of this out, I knew pretty much the size of caliber, the whole, I knew what I was looking at. Put together, it took me about 6 hours to put together a full report, and in those just regular folding, like manila folders that you see in a file folder, the family presented it to the police department. The police reviewed it and said, he's right. Whoever you had do this was absolutely right. 100%. He knows what he's talking about. But guess what? Because it involves a former police officer, case closed, and they ruled it as my then fiance's cousin removing himself from the picture. So even though I cracked the case, law enforcement refused to do anything about it, even though I was right. Okay, so even though I still have that, now I'm 2 for 2, if you will, in the criminal investigative world. That is a win that I was right. But does it mean that it was a full win? Well, the people who did it got away with it. And this is going to be a common theme, all right? This is going to be a common theme that you guys are going to hear. Independent investigators like myself will crack the case, but does it mean that law enforcement's going to do anything? Unfortunately, that's a hit or miss situation. I was angry because, the people who did wrong got away with it. So was it all for nothing? No. Deep down, I knew I did the right thing. Okay? So at least I could take that away from it, But does it still piss me off to this day? Absolutely. I know it's been over 20 years, but it still pisses me off today. Because those people are still out there. And they got away with it. That pisses me off. Okay? Plain and simple. That pisses me off. They got away with it. A young dad who was getting his act together, doing the right thing, was taken out of the picture, and the people who did it got away with it. And for that, I'm still angry. But at least I did the right thing. Gotta take the wins where you can, folks. So, if you can take anything away from this video, yes, the bad guy got away with it, even though it was found, and I mean, they could probably put him away for a long time. But that's something that you're going to run into, as a man of action, a man that's willing to do what they can to do the right thing, even when it's not the popular thing or that sort of thing. Sometimes that's just the way the chips fall. That's a risk you're always going to have to take. But at least in the end, you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I did the right thing. You can look at your other half and say, I did the right thing. You can look at your kids and say that I did the right thing. You can look at your parents and say I did the right thing. All of these things matter. Okay? Because at day's end, it doesn't matter who you wake up next to. You still got to wake up with yourself. And that is the biggest thing that I can start talking about in these videos. Okay? At day's end, you're the one who has to wake up with yourself. And if you've just been holding up a cell phone and filming and not being a man of action, can you honestly look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm a good man? Yeah, I know that's a term that sometimes doesn't hold the weight that it once did. But can you look at yourself and say you're a good man? I don't believe you can. That's my feelings on it. If you have different feelings, leave it in the comments section below. Try to be civil about it, please. So that brings us to the spot reminding you, Patreon, Teespring. You guys know the drill. But from there, the only other thing I have to say is get out there and work on a project. Don't care what it is. Just do something with yourselves. Remember, idle hands and a creative mind go together like oil and water. If you have a sweetheart, sweep them off their feet. Do something special for them today. And as always, for every last one of you out there, no one out there has told you that they love you today. Prince Malcolm does. God bless you, and have a happy 24. Thank you.